is level 3 in what are called the Maharata text teachings, or the teachings, the freedom teachings of the inner Christos, or the inner Christ. They're also very expansive teachings that have to do with much more than just spirituality as we've learned to think about it. These teachings have to do with understanding the mechanics of creation itself. Now, most of you, I would hope, have, because I believe it was a requirement for this level 3 course, to have at least study the correspondence course, the Dance for Love and the Dance for Life. Is there anybody here that has not read the Dance for Love or Life material? Excellent. Oops, uh-oh. All right. You've read some of it. All right, but you do have the material, at least. All right. Because the reason that was required for this course is we're coming in at level 3, and if you haven't had the first 2 levels, you're probably going to get lost very quickly. Now, if you find that problem, anybody that hasn't really read through, and when I say read through, the two courses prior to this, Dance for Life and Dance for Love, the books themselves are just what are like we call glorified chart packs, which means the information was assembled almost during the workshop. So whatever charts and graphs and information we have that we're able to get in typeset form appears in the book. But right now, because we have not had time to get everything put into a book like a normal book that you can read, like you have a lot of explaining text in between graphs and things, we have just not had the time to do that. This program is not that old, and there's continually a new level being given. So if any of you are a bit sketchy on the Dance for Love and the Dance for Life information, the book with the videos that go with it, or the audios that go with it, will help a lot. Now, with the Dance for Freedom, it begins to get more fun, as they say. Spirituality begins to get fun after the hard work that we've done in Dance for Love and Dance for Life, because both of those programs were challenging in various ways. First, we had to challenge our fear of going outside of the norm, which means contemplating the reality of a belief system that's very different than what most people on the planet will teach you right now. It brings us into confrontation a lot of times with the other belief systems that are out there. We begin to see how much information was taken out of other spiritual belief teachings. If we've gone through, you're still here and you're still coming back for level 3, so that means you've probably moved through some of those and you're still surviving it. So some just threw it out and said, yeah, I don't need the other stuff. This is where my freedom lies. Other people, it's very, very hard, particularly if you've had religious training ingrained in you and a lot of fear surrounding it, that God might be mad at you if you decide to look at things this way instead of the way the priests told you. There are a lot of the things of what we call the shadow. We all have a part of ourselves. Everything on this planet has a part of itself that is known as the shadow. The shadow is not just a concept of a part of ourself that is not quite integrated yet. Science likes to refer to the shadow as the subconscious mind. And there's a lot of information in psychology that tells us about the subconscious mind and how it can do wacky things to your life. It can mess up your chemicals because there's information stored in the subconscious mind that creates chemical changes in the body and in the brain. Science looks at the brain and the body and says, there's these strange chemical combinations happening in the brain, and that causes these problems of the spirit and of the mind. And it's really the other way around. We have a subconscious mind, and it is connected to our shadow, but it is not just what our shadow is. Now, when we look at our cultures, really our history of our cultures, and the wacky things human beings can do sometimes. I mean, we've had wars with each other for thousands of years now. We can kill each other. We can be loving at the same time. There's a lot of what's called polarity consciousness that exists in the human form. And we've come to accept this as a normal state of being, as if this is what God made human beings to be. Trapped in polarity consciousness, where there's constantly the right versus wrong, good versus evil dictum going on in our lives. Even if we don't think about those things consciously, we think about them on levels of consciousness that are very close to what your brain is really focused on right now. Every time we make a decision as to should we do this or should we do that, there's a whole set of subconscious beliefs that come into play. And there's a little place of your consciousness that exists between the part of yourself you keep track of and the part of yourself that is on the subconscious level, below your level of awareness. It's like an intermediary that passes on the belief imprints from the subconscious mind up into the conscious mind. And that's where you get that regulator. That's where you get your inner child and your inner parent and your inner dictator and your inner comforter. We have all of these aspects of our identity that are part of our larger multidimensional identity structure. But one of the parts of multidimensional anatomy that we hadn't moved into before in the Cathara Healing Program or within the early stages of the Dance 4 programs was the aspect of the shadow. We'll find out through this course that there is a tangible structure to the shadow, just like there's a tangible structure to the soul. In order to understand the tangible structure of the shadow, we need to understand a large belief paradigm that spans millions and billions of years of history. We don't have to spend lots of time on the detail of that history, just the important key points, because it is through this history that this shadow being of ourselves was formed, and it is a physical part of our anatomy as well as a part of ourselves and our subconscious that actually helps to control our energy. We're going to learn about the shadow in this workshop, not today. Today we're going to learn about things that are a little bit more fun. We're going to have, and this is for the people who are already aware of it and also for the people who are not too sure because they've just kind of touched base with the Dance 4 programs, the basic overview, a quick overview of universal structure as it was taught in Dance for Life and Dance for Love, particularly focusing again on what were called the Eka maps of the God World Gates, because these are a key part of the teachings of the Maharata. The God World Gates refer to stargates. Stargates are real phenomena. They're not just things you see on sci-fi television. When we begin to understand the cosmic structure that we are intimately a part of and how our biologies connect to that structure, we begin to understand why these teachings are called the freedom teachings. Because when you look at what is being taught here compared to what is being taught on this planet and has been for the last 10,000 years, this is a breath of fresh air. There's some challenges, because it means you have to let go of the limitations that you had accepted as real. But when we begin to understand that there is such a level of reality that is so much more expanded and larger than what we're used to seeing here on Earth, we find parts of ourselves that hold awarenesses that we can walk through this world with a completely different relationship with all of the things around us. Now, most people, when they want to get spiritual, the reason why they want to get spiritual is because they figured out that the way they were doing things just aren't working like they'd like them to. Either they don't feel connected to anything, even though they love their family and might love their community or their church or whatever. There's still a feeling of something missing and not connection. That's actually one of the more positive reasons people get spiritual in this day and age. Other people get spiritual because they have a bad experience or a set of bad experiences, or they look back at their life and they see there's nothing but bad experiences and they're wondering what's wrong. The reason to get spiritual is the reasons to get spiritual are very varied and they're very unique for each individual. But behind all of those seeming reasons why you decided to take a spiritual path, there is a core reason that's intrinsic to every one of us. We have higher parts of our identity that are fully awake and aware and fully at one with God or with Source. Right now, those parts of ourselves know we are here in this reality framework and that we have forgotten them and that we feel lonely. When we feel lonesome, our higher parts feel that. Our higher parts of ourselves are aware of that. When we have a question, our higher parts already have the answer. We don't know that down here, but our higher parts do. So there's a part of each one of us that actually stimulates us when the time is right for us to begin a spiritual conquest. We're going to look through things and find out what is really spiritual. Some people decide to stay in a situation of spiritual identification that was given to them by their parents or by their parents' parents, or if you take it back 20 generations, I was a Catholic, so I'll always be one. My whole family is Catholic, that means I have to be. Some people find their spiritual identity through that belief, and it's unfortunate because when people are rigidly attached to the definition of a thing, first of all, they limit how much they can even understand of the true identity of the thing itself, and they limit themselves as to how much they're allowed to grow. There are belief systems on the planet right now that have been taught under the name of Christianity and under the name of Jesus Christ, which is a very sacred name in our teachings as well. But they've been taught in a way that they were used to keep people as self-controlling entities, where you were told, don't read that, don't look at that, God will punish you if you do this or do that, especially if you look into other paradigms of belief. If you happen to be raised Catholic and you go to the priest, the better of the priest will at least tell you, well, you say, I want to be Protestant, or I decided I want to be Jewish. The priest will not be happy about this. And they'll try to point out to you all the reasons why it's better to stay stuck in the paradigm you're in. than to learn about anybody else's understanding of the nature of God or the nature of spirit. Why people became priests in the first place was because they were very comfortable being stuck in that relationship. Now, the belief system that we represent is a very ancient one. It is the original written belief system of spiritual identification that was given to this 15-dimensional time matrix. All of our holy books came out of this and then were twisted and edited and used for purposes that entrapped and enslaved the souls of humans. One of the greatest lies ever told was the lie that we were fallen. That was an intention that certain groups of beings had for the human race. But the human race was the angelic human race. They were created as the guardians of this universe. Some of you that have been with us for a while have heard this lots before, but it doesn't hurt to hear it again. To remind yourself that you are a guardian being. You were created as an angel, and you forgot because certain things happened in a place that you came in to help. But the place was so wrought with sickness that you actually took on the sickness, and part of that sickness was the forgetting who you were, where you came from, what your job was, what you wanted to do. See, when we're doing what we want to do, there's a joy in it. If you're very happy cleaning bathrooms, you will do it with a smile on your face. You'll get up at 6 a.m. every day because it has to be done before the 9-to-5ers come in, and you will be at peace with the work that you do and the service that you give. If your thing is farming, you will love the growing of things and the being able to give in a way of foodstuffs or whatever, giving it to other people to help them have a better life. It's when we are not in touch with what we came to do that we end up doing things we don't like repeatedly. Most people, if they were given a chance to have the type of house, car, reality around them that they would like to have, without having to go to work for someone else, it'd be amazing how many people would go on strike permanently. Yeah. Most of us have come, and we've been taught through our belief systems, both through science and through religion, that we do not have the right to have things the way we would feel good about. We don't have the right to say, well, I don't want to work, but I still expect to have a nice standard of living. What if work was play? Now, artists sometimes have taken this freedom. They've had a bad reputation for many, many centuries in the early days because they would have the passion. They'd have that artist vision and made them a little wacky compared to most people who are just acting like little drone soldiers and saying, I've got to do this and I've got to do that. You know, most of the artists at least could smile. They could also cry. They could also do really wacky things. But they were in touch with the emotional body, where for years, centuries, we've been raised to disassociate the emotional body completely in order to maintain mental balance and spiritual conviction. It's interesting because there's a reason that those teachings were originally put here as far as don't let the emotions rule you. They got twisted and perverted into an emotional suppression reality where we were taught, particularly males, were taught it was not okay to cry, it was not okay to feel. I don't care if you want it that way. Who do you think you are to have a right to have things that way? I didn't get what I wanted. I mean, moms say this a lot, so do dads and things in the old days especially. But there was originally a reason why the teaching of what appeared to be limitation of the emotional body were given. Because there was, in the times of Atlantis, before the disappearance of Atlantis in 9558 BC, there was a knowledge that the emotional body had an illness, that it was connected to something called the shadow body, and that you could not always trust what the emotions were going to move you into. What felt good wasn't always good for you on a physical level, on a spiritual level, or a mental level. Now, it doesn't mean the emotional body itself was bad. Now, it got twisted into that, where we are for centuries taught not to have emotions, not to trust our emotions, to master our emotions. Mastering our emotions means healing them. And you can't heal the emotional body unless you understand what is making it ill. And in order to understand what is making it ill, which is the structure of the shadow body, you need to understand where that structure came from and how it deviates from what was originally there. In the work that we're going to do tomorrow particularly, we will get into shadow body anatomy. Some of you have had this before, and this will be new for some of you, where we've learned in the Cathara Healing Program, we learned about our basic 15-dimensional structure. We learned that we have a chakra system and that we have kundalini currents that run consciousness in and out of our body. We learned that we have an auric field and a Cathara grid, core template. We learned that we have shields, which are the scalar wave discs. They look like discs of energy that come out once certain things in frequency activate within the body. We've learned about the good things of the anatomy, and we've learned what the original structure of the anatomy is. We've learned that there are 15 chakras, not just 7, not just 12, not 13. There's a lot of systems out there that teach you partial information about the truth, but they don't teach you where all these pieces fit together. Kathara healing alone brought that into focus because it showed a structure of subtle body anatomy that went right down into the core of the template that everything else that you can't see is built on, and it brought it all the way up into the level of the atomic structure itself. When we got into the dance floor programs, and we were shown how literally within the atomic structure the atoms were made out of. These are where these energy currents run. These are how they manifest, the particle names of them. So the anatomy that we were shown has given us back part of our freedom. At least now we know what we're composed of, where our stations of consciousness are, and what we need to do with our body to get them back in. It's not always easy, because there's lots of blockages that can get in the way, and that's where shadow comes in. Shadow blockages are the same type of thing as energy currents running. You can have running currents that are the way they're supposed to be, bringing consciousness and health into the body. And when you have blockages of energy, you have areas where consciousness and energy can't circulate in the body. The shadow body is a construct that takes literally 2/3 of our life force currents away from us and does something else with them. Now, it's connected to the emotional body, which is the D2 level, dimension 2 level of our three-dimensional construct down here. When we begin to learn about shadow body structure, we will simultaneously learn about what this course is really about, because this is not a course on shadow body. We try to stay away from as much of the negatives as possible if we can. Sometimes you can ignore negatives until they come up and bite you. Just like people can feel like they have cancer but afraid to go to the doctor, so they finally go when it's like completely past where you can do anything about it. We get reputation sometime. Our work gets a reputation. Oh, that's negative stuff. It isn't negative stuff at all, because we will teach you what might appear to be negative from a non-Christos perspective. We might teach you what those things are so you can do something about them, but simultaneously and at the same time we teach you the solution. And in the solutions we teach, you find the highest teachings on spirituality, ascension, becoming at peace and at one with God, embodying the God force. Next to the shadow body, there is its solution. And this is what part of tomorrow's teachings will be about also. This is the focus of this particular workshop in the Dance for Freedom program. And it is called the flame body, the eternal flame body. When this information was given, they started giving it in Bermuda in July because they needed to give it to us early. It was supposed to be given just for the Dance for Freedom program, but they've literally started to bring this information out. And we don't have the text between the text yet. You know, I mean, we understand it, but you should see the pile of notes. It's like about this high that has to be translated into typewritten form to stick in between the pictures and the things that we do have in the handbooks. It is a massive training course. But what we will get are the most important parts of that training course. The flame body is the most intimate part of your relationship to God. You and God are one as the flame body. The flame body, just like the regular 15-dimensional body structure, is a living, tangible part of your interdimensional structure of identity. Now, angels always had flame bodies. That's how they could fly from one place to another, because the flame body forms within a natural Merkaba vehicle. So as we move into these progressively higher level of teachings on anatomy and your relationship to spirit, the flame body is like a marker. It's like graduating from one level of teachings to another. In the flame body mechanics, we learn to play with levels of energy that are far beyond the 15-dimensional spectrum. We learn to play with energy that gives us the conscious ability to co-create a decision with our higher self. We came into this lifetime and in others, with a choice of how many strands of DNA we wanted our templates to be capable of carrying. We came in, some of us, as indigo children, which have anywhere from 24 to 48 strand capacity. Most of us came in as humans, angelic humans, with 12 strand capacity, many of which had damage. So they were supposed to have 12 strands, but they only maybe had 4 because of the damage that was done throughout the other time vectors that we are incarnating in at the same time as this one. what the flame body, and this is something that isn't written yet, and even the people that have done the flame body activations, this is coming through now. The flame body activations, there will be a certain level in these reached, and I believe it's in Dance for Joy, where you can make the conscious decision, as if you had died, gone on the other side, did your review, and decided you were going to come back with a new type of template. You can actually upgrade. You need help with your higher parts, your avatar level of identity, your Christos level self has to make that decision with you. But these flame body activations will allow us to run so much frequency and begin building that we can actually build ourselves more template. So if you didn't come in as an indigo, you have the capacity to incarnate in the same body as one. It's called soul braiding on the smaller levels. It's called indigo braiding on the higher levels. What this means is that if you and your higher levels of consciousness co-decide that there's a reason to bring more consciousness into this time frame than you originally thought you would need, you will be able to regenerate more of the indigo imprint. If you decide you need to be an ascended master in this lifetime because of the world service drama that you want to participate in, you will be able to make that choice and begin the steps to build the indigo template. I didn't know that. That just came literally. Our friend Ma'a, who is one of the Iyani that provide these translations of these teachings for us, has just let us know that. Meanwhile, we need to know what a flame body is before we can worry about how can we use it. And boy, if we can do that, if we could regenerate an entire indigo template, what else could we do? Right? The flame body anatomy, when the information started to come through, there's a part of me that just screamed with joy. That stuff! I remember it from the ancient times. Oh my God, it must be really interesting out here because they're giving us these now. These teachings are usually given in different time frames that would be considered our very distant past or our quite distant future. Right now, the level of consciousness and frequency on this planet isn't really primed for flame body understanding. Indigos will have an easier time understanding it. But these teachings were the teachings of the high masters, not just the priests, not just the archpriests and things. These are the teachings that when the Illuminati took over this planet, they tried to destroy or capture from each other whoever was hiding them. Because these are the teachings that literally began to expand us in biology as well as in our minds and our awareness, enough to, first of all, heal the shadow. This is why they're being given now, because we have this shadow body issue. That's where our blockages of everything come from. If we believe that we were once telepathic in human form, and now we're not, that's a blockage. Why is that blocked? It's blocked because the shadow body has taken 2/3 of your energy, and it's taken certain configurations in your system that block telepathy. Some people have inner vision, but they can't hear anything from interdimensional spectrum. That is a blockage. Now, certain blockages are just immaturity levels, and it doesn't mean you're immature. It means your system hasn't activated yet, and it will just activate, and eventually you'll get all those abilities. That would be fine. It's just called evolution and growth, if there wasn't something standing in the way that was stopping those senses from opening, stopping that cognition, and stopping your body from producing the chemical celestaline, which is key to stargates. The human body used to chemically produce something that's called, a substance called celestaline, which is a transient element. It is an element. It would be on our elemental charts if they knew about it here. But it is transient in that once it is produced, it goes away very quickly. It deteriorates very quickly and goes back into its components, which are not like, an element is like, it doesn't have components other than the molecules it's made out of. Celestaline, the body needs to produce celestaline because celestaline will trigger the hormonal reactions within the entire body structure that allows on an atomic level a very interesting process. That process has to do with what your atoms do. You have the nucleus and the atoms with the protons in it and the neutrons, and you have the electrons rotating around them inside the atom. In the process of Stargate passage, your atoms have to be able to bring the electrons into the nucleus and turn them into protons, and then open what's called a neutron window, which means they all turn into neutrons. It's called particle-antiparticle fission and then fusion on the interior level. This is how you get through Stargates. Now, you don't have to sit there and talk to every one of your atoms and tell it how to do it. The human body was designed, because it's an angelic human body, to make this substance that would trigger the chemical chains in the DNA to do certain things, that they would talk to the hormonal secretion levels, the amino acids in the body, and there would be a whole chemical communication that would take place within the body. This would be instantaneous. Ah, there's a gate. I'm going to walk through it. Your body would go through this whole communication with itself. And instantaneously, it would do the adjustments you need to walk through the gate. You would turn into light, go into full Merkaba, and then downscale and slow it all down on the other side and come back into manifestation. That is ascension. Well, it depends on where you go. I mean, if you're up here and you decide to visit the lower worlds, then it's descension. But it is interdimensional mobility. It's how you got into manifestation in the first place. We've all got into manifestation, which means we all did it once before, but we got stuck here, a lot of us. For the body to produce the celestialine element, the shadow body has to be cleared. Now, a lot of us have worked with spirituality, we've worked with this program, and you've got to the point where you might not biologically be able to pass through a Stargate yet, but if, say, you and your avatar level had decided on a certain point where you were going to drop your body in the death transition and then you were going to go on to your next incarnation, you would already have the ability to pass through the gates to do that, because you still need to get through stargates. Even after your consciousness drops in association with the physical body through the transition here that we know as death, that you still have a template that's holding your consciousness together. And that template has to have the capacity to go through gates, or you get stuck in what's called density 1. Density 1 is dimension 1, 2, and 3, which gives us the reality field that we are in right now. If we want to experience the higher worlds, the worlds where angels and higher than angels come from, we need to be able to first prep our consciousness. Some people will leave through the death experience, but they will have, through flame body activation, the ability to not have to incarnate in the lower densities anymore. In fact, the flame body activations are preparing us for the opportunity of being part of a new race, a new guardian race that is being created in what are called the inner echo worlds. It requires the consciousness to have a certain level of frequency holding capacity before you can incarnate into a body of that type that has, it's an indigo type body with higher gene code. People who don't get to walk through biologically will have that option. At the end of this course, we're going to explore some material that has to do with current events. And boy, on the inner levels are things hopping. Particularly for this group, because some of you have heard it and some of you haven't heard it yet. From the last time we were in England and had a workshop here, we had not received the announcement yet that the Guardians and the Eoni are now on what's called Plan B. Now, for any of you that have read the Voyager's books, it has been always a plan that was over there on the side that only if absolutely necessary would the Guardians' agenda revert to Plan B. Plan A was, okay, get into this system, wake up here, get yourself fixed, and then help fix the problems with the planetary grids and all of those things. Plan B was, uh-oh, it's going real bad. Evac time, right? It was the evacuation plan. Now, we have been on Plan B since March 23rd of 2002. We will understand why by the last day's workshop, where we will cover that information, the progression of events. But that doesn't mean the world's going to hell and we're going to jump off it. Okay? That's not what it's about. It means we're being called for the original commission that the indigos were created for in the first place, which was major, universal level intervention, where we can hold and run frequency that will help to evacuate part of the planet itself. So it's not that we're going to let the planet lose it and go back to space dust and we're going to hop off through a gate and escape. That would be the worst case scenario. We have been on evacuation standby. Now there's a difference between Plan B evacuation and evacuation standby. First the standby would come. Okay, it looks like it might get rough. If it gets rough, well, there's levels of rough. The first levels of rough, you can keep people and indigos on the planet and teach them how to handle the frequencies that are going to be coming in so they don't get sick from them, and teach them how to become a healing agent so they can indeed help evacuate part of the planetary grids from being harmed. If it goes worse, it's almost like the silly alert system they have in the States as far as terrorist attacks. One color means this and the next color means this. If the standby notice goes up a bit, that means E. There's not a lot of grids that we're going to be able to do much with, or it can't. There's going to be events that take place that we won't be able to fix it beforehand, but we could fix it after. And in that case, the humans, though, won't survive during the process. That would be a point where there would be a temporary evacuation arranged. They tend to give, and this is from ancient history, 3 months warning. So if there comes a point where it's got to get them off planet, and then maybe bring them back to fix things if necessary, we would get 3 months warning for that. That would be evacuation active notice. We are on evacuation standby right now. What that means is there's certain ways we can begin to work with helping to heal the planet. It also means there's going to be some changes coming on the planet, that some of which I can't even fathom. You'll find out why I say that when we get into Sunday's workshop, because we're going to talk about a sophistication of interdimensional drama that has been taking place here for a very long time, and how it's landing smack in our lap right now on the planet. We're going to talk about the mechanism that's called the beast, which is responsible for the part of us called the shadow. We're going to talk about things like grid phase lock, which means the planetary grids lock into a certain angular rotation of particle spin, which means they have a limited capacity to move between gates or time frames. We're going to find out all sorts of things about why we need our flame body. And what we're going to do first is find out what our flame body is and how to use it. So the flame body teachings would have gone slower. There would have been a lot more text in between them, because there's a whole set of spiritual cognition and consciousness that comes into the body with flame body activation. But right now, there's not time to write that part of the book. So we are being given the technology to understand the anatomy of the flame body, and we are being given what are called the sacred flame codes, which are the particular mathematical commands that your shields respond to in order to do the higher level activations of the flame body. Flame body is fascinating because, you know how in the beginning of the Dance Floor program is the big objective. It's like, we're running a race, and what's at the end? What's the finish line? Everybody wants to become an avatar, right? 12-strand activation, the D12 avatar, Mahanta Merkaba vehicle. I can go 12 dimensions. I can go visit 4 different matter densities in this time matrix. And then there's that little Rishi level that's up there too. That's 15-dimensional part of myself, right? Well, when we did Dance for Love, and they introduced the Eka maps of the God World gates, we found out that the 15-dimensional system is just one tiny part of the smaller systems within what are called the Eka God Worlds. There are parts of our body that correspond to the inner Eka system and to the steps of the God World gates. These are the parts of ourselves that are known as the flame bodies. So this isn't your average light body course. You know how you hear, everybody talks about, I want to activate my light body. First of all, most of those courses don't even tell you what the heck your light body is. It's this big circle of energy around you that activates when you do this, right? Well, we're going a lot further than light body activation. What's really funny is the term light body activation is tricky. It's a trick because it indicates an Anunnaki teaching. The light body is the light sound crystal body. And when we understand our anatomy through realizing that that construct that they call the light body is actually made of light and sound and the crystalline structure of chelons, if you just take the light part of it and look at the technicals of what that means, it means you're separating the light from the sound part and the crystalline part. It means you've created something else. The light body systems correspond to what is called the net, which is the Nibiruan electrostatic transduction field. Now, this particular field is something that we have in our auras right now. It's something we have coded into our chakras and our axiotonal lines and our shields right now. That particular light body is why we have a shadow. And that particular light body was meant to take us on a journey that we were never intended to take. When we get into today's workshop, we're going to talk about the basics, real quick overview of cosmic order, but focusing on the basic structure of the gates, how they relate to the reality that we see, and how that relates to, eventually we will go into how that relates to this structure of the net, how it relates to the structure of the shadow body. And to understand these things, we will have to get into the structure of the beast. Now, we won't get into anatomy of the beast. The beast is a machine. It is an interdimensional machine that is causing a problem here. And that implies there's somebody that runs this machine, somebody that made it, pointed it at us, and is running it to get a certain effect. That means there's an agenda behind the beast. We're going to learn about the beast, but before that we're going to learn about basic cosmic structure to remember how gates plug into each other and those kind of things. And then we're going to spend a little bit of time, when we get to the end of the basic structure part, of talking about the black hole matrices, and a little bit about did God create these two? Because when we get into this structure, that one of the most common questions was, well, that means that God created these systems too, where like evil comes from. It gets in when you take these ideas and see the framework of creation to the level that it's exposed within the dance floor programs, and you realize there are things called imploding black hole matrices. It leads to a question of, did then God create evil as well? Did God create evil on purpose? The answer to that was no. But did God create evil consciously? The answer to that is yes. So we'll get a little bit into the difference between those two. It's important that we begin to be mature enough in spirit and in mind and in emotion to face things that other people might choose to call scary. Scary is relative. I mean, when you're, a little kid, spiders are scary. When you're a little kid, shadows on the wall are scary. And then you realize, oh, I don't have to be afraid of that after all. All right. And you grow up. Well, we've been taught in our cultures that lots of things are scary. We've been taught to live in fear of just about everything. But the main thing we've been taught is talking about, negative, dark things. Everything from, like, possessions to demons to all those icky stuff that if it wasn't for the Bible and things like that remind us that, God did say they were there once upon a time, our science would tell us don't even exist. Where did these things come from? Were they ever real? We're moving into a science-dominant time that's telling us all that stuff from the ancient days was all old wives' tales. There were no demons that came out and tormented people. There is no such thing as possession. They also tell you at the same time that when you die, you're dead, that you have no soul, technically speaking. Once your brain shuts off, your consciousness goes away as if it never was. Those two things go hand in hand. If you believe you have a soul, which implies multidimensional spectrum, the other part of that belief is acknowledging that there are also things like demons and all those weird things that you heard about in the ancient wives' tales. When you put the two understandings together, when you put science and mythology together, there is a place where they meet, and that was the original structure that they polarized from. The original structure was understanding the science and the spirit of the creation matrix itself and what we're in. All of those wives' tales about the horrible negative thingies that nobody really wants to deal with and everybody's afraid of, that kind of stuff, they come from what are called imploding black hole systems. Some of them come from what are called phantom systems. There's a difference between those two kinds of systems. An imploding system is a system that has reached a point of no return, where it can't be fixed, it can't be regenerated. Its template has been so damaged that the only way the consciousness trapped within it and the matter trapped within it can go back into expansion into God is in pieces. It needs to implode. The templates literally implode, consciousness fragments, and then goes back into the natural structure that it originally came out of. Phantom systems are different. They're still plugged into a living, naturally structured matrix, template, universal template. They have the ability to run some of their own primal life force currents as long as they keep that connection to the original matrix that they fell from. They have the ability to be regenerated, to, if certain things are done with the templates, to turn the templates back around where they can fully hold the original divine blueprint that they had fallen out of. In the drama that we're in right now, we are dead center at a huge drama that involves a black hole system, an imploding black hole system, a phantom system that used to belong to our time matrix, and our system. The reason we had old wives' tales about demons and things that went bump in the night and flew across rooms and came out of mirrors and that kind of stuff is because of these connections to the black hole systems. Beings that are in the natural structure of a Christos system have a consciousness that is based on love. It is utterly fearless. It does not fear because it knows it is always directly connected to Source, to God. The answer is always there, and even if you can't process it mentally, you will be guided. There's a sense of safety There's a sense of community within people who are within fully natural Christos matrices. The Christos matrix is simply following the divine blueprint that God originally used to create the matrix for three-dimensionality itself. Now, the drama we're in the middle of has done something interesting. It created from an angelic race, which was our race, the angelic humans, it created an anomaly, a race anomaly, which was a race that had this other thing. It was almost like you're supposed to have two arms, but you ended up with three, one sticking out the middle of your back. That was an interesting twist of genetics, right? Well, we have a shadow that does that. We have a part of our subtle body structure that doesn't belong there, and that structure is organized right into the DNA template and right into the chemical DNA. We have shadow chemicals running through our body that control part of the chemical operations of the body and the brain. When we get into understanding this and we start to realize that our shadow and the things that go bump in the night are all connected to the same thing, we start to understand the bigger drama that we're in the middle of, and we start to understand the solutions to the drama. Our shadow bodies are what would right now be considered part of the phantom matrix. The phantom matrix is a black hole system that fell from here 250 billion years ago. And there has been a healing experiment for that long, in Earth terms, 250 billion years, that races of beings have been coming in to try to help heal the phantom matrix and bring out the races of consciousness that had fallen into it. The end of that experiment is coming in this time frame. It isn't because God decided it was enough and don't heal the rest of them. The decision to allow for the healing or allow for the phantom matrix 250 billion years ago, to allow it to stay open where it could be healed, it had a time limit on it. If it continued to pull more energy from the living system to the point where that system had more critical mass of energy than this one, or it was getting to the point where it could pull this whole living matrix in and turn it into a phantom system as well, pull it into the black hole system. The point right before that could occur would be when the healing experiment would be ended if it didn't work. If it hadn't worked and we hadn't got everything out of the phantom matrix and healed. It would have worked if it weren't for another glitch in the problem. And this glitch is what we're going to learn about when we study shadow body. It's not just us that has a shadow body. Plants have them, ants have them, the planet has one. And literally, all of the planets and galaxies in this particular 15-dimensional time matrix have a shadow. And it's because of the other matrix that I'd mentioned, the black hole, the imploding black hole matrix, which is in a completely different place from our matrix and frequency. It was never a part of our original connection to the God world gates. It's from another set that had fallen. It is because of this particular matrix, it's called the Wisadek matrix, that the phantom matrix was not able to heal, and that we have progressively digressed instead of brought we came in as angelic and have gone through a very long cycle of digression to the point where if it isn't turned around within ourselves, we won't be able to get back to being what we originally were. Now, this whole drama that we're in the middle of, that has to do with our shadows and planetary shadows and galactic and universal shadows, has to do with an agenda from several races of beings that reside in the Wisadek black hole matrix. Their agenda is, they are very intelligent, they have recognized that they created a situation in which the only way they can return home to God and to Source is through implosion, and that's not okay with them. They decided that instead of trying to make peace with the fact that it was a consequence of energy, God's not inflicting it on them, it was a consequence of the way they abused natural divine energy and natural divine knowledge, that circumstance arose. There is no trump card. There is no, okay, well, I promise God I'll really never, ever, ever do it again. Can you please get me out of this black hole? Right? When there's a certain level of template damage, even God can't make that exception because it would compromise the living structure of the entire matrix to try to do it. It would cause implosion all the way through the matrix chain. So these beings got themselves into a position that we'll talk about a little bit more on Sunday, how they did that, where they are unable to do ascension. They are not able to go through natural Christos gates in a natural system. They are stuck within their smaller universe, and they only have 11.5 dimensions in their universe. They don't even have a 15-dimensional structure. The primal light and sound fields of D13, 14, and 15, they don't have their own organic set of those. They have limited, therefore, life force currents available. They have limited mobility available. And ultimately, they die. And see, the beliefs that we have here, that science has been teaching us and that some religions taught us pieces of before, where we are in a hostile universe, we are in a limited universe that doesn't have, and that we have to fight and compete for a limited amount of energy. And science's belief that we don't really have a soul, that we won't be able, that there's no such thing as going back to God, that all of that spiritual stuff isn't real. These ideas have been coming from their matrix, because in their reality it is the truth. They are connected to God. They will always be a part of the body of God. But the only way to get back into expansion, into what that is, and to touch that reality again, is through finding a peace with the choices they made and the consequences that come, and knowing that in freeing themselves from a form that became monstrous to themselves even, they can start over once they allow that to happen. But what they're heading for is different than what we're heading for. People on this planet do not have to go the path of implosion. They have the ability to still regenerate the organic condition, which is the path of ascension. In the path of ascension, even death was not even a reality. The bodies didn't run out of energy. They didn't get old and deteriorate. That's not a natural condition. So if you look around us in our world and you see how we've come to accept death as a natural thing. Oh, God created it that way. No, God didn't create it that way. We've come to accept anomalies as the real thing, as if the thing that's broken was actually what the thing before it was broken looked like. It was like we look at a vase that's on the floor shattered in pieces, and somebody tells us that's vase. So when we think of the word vase, we think, oh, pieces of glass laying on the floor, right? Because we don't remember what a vase looked like. We're given back the knowledge now to begin to heal on a very rapid level the condition that has left us as the pieces of broken glass on the floor that we call normal. We call that human. We call this human. This isn't what human was. If we can get to the point where we can really reserve our right to have a different idea. I mean, our religions tell us one set of ideas, our scientists tell us another, our politicians tell us another, and they use whichever of the other two is convenient. You have a right to say, okay, you can look at it that way, but I beg to differ for myself, and I have the right to choose what I will believe. It may not make you very popular. You know what happens when you start to adopt a belief system like this? There's an interesting set of events. First, you'll have all sorts of things, all sorts of people sent in to mess with your head, to tell you why you need to stay stuck in the old belief system. Right? And if they can't convince you logically, then they'll do the emotional pull. Right? Then they'll mess with your emotional mind. If you really love me, you wouldn't do this. Oh, you're going into a cult because you won't be Jewish anymore or be Catholic anymore. Well, it's really funny because like if you're a Jewish person and you decide you really want to be Catholic and you tell that to your Jewish family, they tell you you're joining a cult, and vice versa. So cult is a word that people throw at each other when it's saying, I can't control you anymore. You're going to expand your mind beyond mine, and that means I can't control you anymore. There's a whole control issue that will come up when you start to say, I'm going to go explore this over here. Don't expect a lot of support. The one thing we will get support about, though, is once the flame body teachings become a bit more available, because they're just being given. There is no book you can go buy on flame body activation that has anything but a few pictures in it that show you a couple of things, and you go, what is that? This information is what everybody was looking for, including the other ones. Some of the ones from Phantom Matrix, still have the ability to heal enough to get out of the Phantom. The ones from the Wisedet Matrix have an ability to do something different. They have an ability to have about 2 billion years of evolution left, and they can take that into the negative or into the positive as far as experience goes. The flame body teachings will help all of them, and the indigos and angelic humans who would love to be able to just get done with whatever I came here to do and go back where I can rest for a bit and understand it all. We're at an amazing period of time because there are events that are that have been set in motion as of March 23rd, 2002 that have expedited the evolutionary design here. There's not a lot of time to wake up, and it's kind of sad. I was absolutely overjoyed when the flame body teachings came through, and a part of me was absolutely devastated for others at the same time. Because of the time frame we have to work with, you're not going to have 3 million people getting into flame body activation. There's not enough time to get this information out to a large enough audience and get people through the initial wake-up stuff where they're saying, oh, maybe I'm afraid to believe that. And, you go through like 3 years of deciding whether or not you're going to believe it before you really work with anything. Some people do. We don't have the time left. We have a time limit on how long we have to heal our shadow bodies. And the portion of our shadow bodies that we are not able to heal will no longer be part of our anatomy after a certain period of time. Right now, shadow body holds 2/3 of our energy and our consciousness. That's just, it's because of the way it's structured, that when we get into shadow body anatomy, you'll find out why that is. If you lose 2/3 of your energy, you're not going to feel very good, first of all. Your physical body is going to have a hard time dealing with what it has left to work with if you're not doing anything to bring in more frequency. And you wouldn't be able to get through a gate even after your body transition. So it's important to heal the shadow body, and it's important to heal it now. That's why we're being given the flame body activations, because there's only one way to heal the shadow body. The shadow body spans 11.5 dimensions. It is 4 densities. It's on this level, it's on your soul level, your oversoul level, and a part of your avatar level. It involves your earth karma, as they say, your Terran karma from density 2, your Gaian karma from density 3, and a part of your Lyran karma from density 4. It's a big thing. Right now, it's bigger in energy and consciousness than we are, but it's chaotically arranged, where it's hard. Do you ever see people that are being treated for mental disorders where they can't keep focused on a certain set of ideas for very long, and they kind of flip to another thing, and it's very hard to be functional when you're fragmented like that? Well, the shadow body is actually holding 2/3 of our energy in that condition. So technically, we're a lot smarter than it is, even right now, even though we're not awake yet. Because it could be brilliant, because it has 2/3 energy, we have 1/3. However, it's all disorganized. So we can use our organizing ability, our ability to organize thoughts and direct energy and direct action in a way that we can heal the body, the shadow body. The only frequencies that are strong enough to heal the shadow body are the flame body frequencies. And that's why we're being given these flame body frequencies now. They're activating on the planet now as well. Because as I said before, the planet has a shadow body too. And what applies to our shadow bodies applies to the planetary shadow body. There is a limit now as to how long is left for that body to heal. And when that limit arises, it will determine what's left of the matter base and the consciousness base on the planetary level too. It would mean whether this planet would be able to hold its matter form or not, whether it would implode or not. It's important that the planet begins healing more of its shadow body as well. And as we work with shadow body technology and we work with flame body technology to heal shadow body technology, we are helping every one of us that begins to activate these higher flame body currents. As we heal our shadow, we help heal the planetary shadow. So we are helping the planet to be able to hold a flame body. Because as we'll find out on Sunday, planetary flame body is absolutely essential for this planet to not go on a journey it was never intended to go on. Part of the planetary grids are going to end up in the Wysidek black hole system by between 2012 and 2017. Part of them will remain in their natural form and be able to hold their original divine blueprint. The largest part of the grids phase locked, or picked their orientation as far as which path, when the events happened on March 23rd of 2002. And most of the grids phase locked in what's called the 31 to 51% divine blueprint left. Not enough to go to the path that's rising in frequency and going into its natural ascension, and too much divine blueprint left to fall. So it gets stuck in a stasis, a static stasis that fights with itself until eventually both parts of the template would implode. They would fragment and go back to space dust. Now, there is a plan on the guardian levels, and guardian levels, not just the ones from D15 on down. This goes all the way up through all of the God worlds, that in order to assist this planet now with its problem of 31 to 51% grid phase lock, certain frequencies can gently separate those templates, the part that's reversed or the part that is coded to go into the Wisadek black hole system and the part that is not. The Maharic part, which is the part that can hold divine blueprint. There are certain frequencies that must come from the higher levels, not just from the inner Eka levels, which are our first level up after the 15-dimensional system, but from the God worlds up above that. Those frequencies have the power to create a natural separation in the templates. This is happening in this 15-dimensional time matrix, not just on Earth, not just in our bodies. However, if we want Earth and our bodies to be able to keep up with the shift, because it's a universal shift that's taking place here, we need to be able to hold the separation in ourselves. We can heal as much as our shadow body as we can to get back our energy. But there's a part of us that has something that's called, and we'll learn about this through the shadow body part of the workshop, Metatronic implants that are unnatural, not normal whatsoever, and they are slowly killing us as a race. Now, these implants are what create the shadow body, and they allow the beings from the Wisadek matrix to literally feed energy from us, to attach to us. This is how possessions take place. They actually use these implants to access our biofields. This whole bunch of mess that's in our biosystems comes from the mechanism that is referred to as the beast. The Metatronic implants are the signs of the beast. There's one specific one that we'll get into later that usually gets a gasp out of the audience. But as we're working with the flame body things, we are going to help ourselves to anchor the frequencies that are coming to our planet through the galactic system, through the universal gate system, that are going to allow this gentle separation of template to take place. If not, the whole bunch of us are going for a ride down in the Wisadek black hole system. And unfortunately, it's not going to be a very fun ride, because to get something that's not in a black hole into a black hole, you have to first, as you start to pull it toward a black hole, the frequencies of the black hole run reverse current compared to what the natural structure would be. And if there's more frequency from the reverse coming at a structure, at a template, than the template's holding, that frequency will crush the template and literally fragment it. So the people and the parts of this planet that are going into the black hole system are going to have their templates first crushed, which means they're going to die biologically. The planetary matter base is going to be crushed. But the people aren't going to be aware of it, because they're going to be stuck in what's called an electrostatic body, which means after the physical matter has been dismantled by the black hole frequencies, it's then reassembled in this net, this artificially generated light body that will hold the original image that the biological form had had. That can be done to planetary land masses, and it can be done to people. When they wake up on the other side, the body's there in its electromagnetic form, and it has a consciousness in it that is no longer the original consciousness, because that has been assimilated into the one who assisted the fall in the first place. So the options aren't really, it's like a no-brainer. I mean, when we start to understand the structure of things and the fact that we are right now on the cusp of a split. There used to be options for 3 paths of evolution, once even 4. Some people could go to Tara, some to Gaia, some would be on Phantom Earth. The whole Phantom framework is being ingested by the other black hole system. It can't be pulled out now. If our system, our universal system, is not separated from its own phantom, it will be pulled in with it. So, when that separation occurs, that means whatever is coded to stay in the natural Christos side will stay. Whatever's stuck in phantom, if it can't get out before that split, is going to go and get full, what's called Metatronic coding, which is what the Wisadek black hole system is built on. It's a mathematical formula of template arranging that's a base 8 formula, and it's built on inversion and perversion of the natural mathematics that allow for the manifestation of consciousness. So, we have shadow bodies to heal, and it's actually not too hard. What's really great about this particular course, and you guys that haven't had any shadow body work yet, it's getting more and more fun because it's getting easier. Now, there is a series of activations. Some of you have been through them if you've been to some of the other workshops recently, because this is the most important stuff to teach right now, because we have a deadline, and I'll tell you what that is in a minute. But if you survive like Dance for Life and Dance for Love, where you're doing Merkabas and you're spinning, trying to get your Merkaba going in the right direction, and you're doing Sans, and you have this technique and that technique. There's so many techniques at this point, it's just like your head spins, even when you're not doing Merkaba. People who've worked even the earlier two programs have put a lot of work into helping these changes to happen in their body. Some have seen some results. Some are just keep doing it because they know eventually they'll build enough frequency through the techniques that they will begin to see results. Then we got into the flame body activations, and the first levels of those when they were introduced in Bermuda, and then they were given again in Phoenix and in Pennsylvania right before we moved to England. There's just this little series of a couple of the techniques that everybody tends to fall asleep the first time they run. It's really funny because they're long. It's not all this hard. If we can get through this one crash course, get this done in, as far as generating the flame body, so you can begin to heal the shadow body, it gets easier after this. You can get things to go on autopilot. The Maharic seal that many people have worked so hard. The first Maharic seal was 26 steps long to get it to actually generate. Then it went down to the quick seal, which was good, much shorter. Then it went down to the insta seal. What this shows is, in the beginning, it takes a lot more work to generate that frequency when it's been sleeping, or to fix that part of the template when it's been broken. But the more you do it, the more frequency you can hold, the less steps you have to do to get the same effect. Now, the effects that we will move through rapidly here, we'll not only learn how to do the flame body, which will sustain your Maharic seal. That means you don't have to do the 26 steps anymore. You don't have to even do the insta seal. It takes you to a higher level, where it reduces it down to 6 steps of flame body activation, and that's it. The Vecca work that we've been doing, if you like to do the Vecca things, you can continue doing them. It'll just make things happen faster, in the frequency. But it makes that go on autopilot too. The Merkaba spins, which are kind of, if there's the one thing that some people, because it's like embarrassing, I'm going to be spinning, I have to go find a closet to do it in, because I'm not going to do. If we had all started singing and spinning and chanting, we would all have been arrested. Because just having us there made the rangers nervous, because it was such a large group. So we were taught how to just simply sit in a circle and give the cue, and we did a salutation, which is like a version of a group round table without standing in the round table positions, by standing up our etheric bodies and having the etheric bodies do the spins. And it was funny because I remember I'd never tried that before. I should have thought of that, just playing with it, but I never did. They had us do that to actually get the etheric body up, where you just kind of imagine it going up and having it doing the spin like you naturally would outside physically. And I remember sitting there going, I could feel the Merkaba going. And I was literally kind of wobbling with it, and some of the other people were too. So it was very real. When you're closing your eyes, you're imagining your etheric body doing your salutation for you, and then you open your eyes and you realize you're doing this, and you don't even realize sitting on the ground, the torque of it, the movement of it is making you go. It starts to help you realize, yeah, I do have an etheric body because something set that in motion. If you can get through the techniques, and there are 19 techniques, I believe 17 of which we do on site in this 3-day workshop. This is like the blast your doors open workshop, all right? Because these have been given in small bits, during a couple of different workshops, but now we're literally going to go from 1 through 19. Yeah. Yeah, the fact that they have showed us how to do this, and they're allowing us to do this, just shows me how serious the drama is that we're in. Because normally there would be a few months, do this level and then wait a few months. They're actually taking us all the way through. It used to be we'd go up to Technique 7, then you had to wait 4 to 6 weeks before you could even do Technique 8. At this point, the planetary grids are activating. The flame body activations are starting in the planetary grids. So we have the grid support. So we can go right on through. We can go to Technique 8 and then Technique 9, and we can get past what's called shadow dancer decoding, which is a big part of shadow healing. Then we can go into something that is a new level that was just introduced in France 3 days ago or whatever. That is where it starts to get really easy. And it's generating the Akasha Amareya flame body, which is the level of the flame body that goes with the Akasha worlds. That's past the Echo worlds. That's past the 15-dimensional structure. We're going to be using what are called the scepter codes. We've been using Vecca codes in the Dance 4 programs. And we've been using one of the Eka codes, which is the Akasha code, before. We're now being given the key codes to use the scepters. We are going to be using, in this particular workshop, we will use scepter 12, which is called the El Hayale, and we will use Eka 12, which is the Riyanayana, and we will be given 2 other Veka codes to create a chain reaction of flame body activation from the Akasha level down. Once these activations are complete within the body, there's enough frequency there for it all to go on autopilot. Now, if it's your first time and you're coming from didn't even do one yet, because some of you have come in from the other workshops where, you did the 4 to 6 weeks of 1 through 7 and then you went on to 8. It wouldn't hurt to do the 4 to 6 weeks of 1 through 7 when you go home, and you have those in the book, just to keep that frequency open. You will open it in this workshop, but having it stay open is going to be depending on how much you have in your template to begin with. It will be stronger if you work a little bit with the Vekas. There's a schedule that will be given at the end of this. It's a very simple way. We're cutting down all the millions of techniques that we've learned all over the place. What's most important to use now. And once we're done with that first level of the schedule, there's the schedule that goes with once you do the activations from the end of this workshop, which are the most powerful ones, where it even makes that simpler. It comes down to it just a very few steps, and not having to spin on the outside, not having to do all the other stuff. You will be able to hold flame body activation. When you can hold it, it also means you can transmit it. People that were interested in Kathara healing, for example. This would be very interesting because you can get the flame fingers, which there used to be ancient tales about those with the flaming hands that could do healing and things that was on a rather large level and sometimes very demonstrative. This is the beginning of opening the flame hands and the flame fingers, where you literally see, in the etheric, you see the little flames. And if they're running the right frequency, they're emerald. They're emerald green flames. And that's the emerald flame of Amaraya. The emerald color isn't the D4 green. It's the color that's the combination of the frequencies of the Ire, the Mane, and the Manal when they're non-polarized and they're brought in together. And that's why the Amaraya flame that we talk about, that we're going to activate in our flame bodies, on the outside of it, if you're going to visualize what it looks like, it would be a beautiful emerald blue-green. And on the inside it has what's called the Eros flame, which is the Christos flame, the Christ flame, and that's pale silver. So it's a silver flame on the inside with a beautiful emerald flame on the outside. That's what the flame body looks like. At least the one you have to build first before you can get out of the 15-dimensional time matrix. What this is all about is not just healing our shadows so we have a chance to do what we need to do next. There's going to be a point in time where it may be, where the plan B may go to the next level of notice. Right now it's standby, where we're getting ourselves healed, we're working on things to help the planet and those kind of things. But there may be a time when things go in a way on this planet that there's a need for temporarily people to actually be physically invited through gates into the inner Earth system. The inner Earth system is in the Eka universe, which we'll go over real quick again when I do the basic structure. With invitation in inner Earth, it's not that they don't want you there, it's just can you come? Because you have to have the minimum of the universal flame body activation. That's just the universal level, to pass through the gates. You don't have to hold that once you get there, but you need it to go through the gates. So we're being taught this now in case an evacuation is needed. Now, if there was an evacuation needed, and this planet had activated a sufficient amount of its own flame body, there would be millions of people that could actually get the DNA repair they needed to go through. So actually, lots of people could be brought through. But if the planetary flame body can't be activated fast enough to a high enough level, there will be people that can't come through, and there may be lots of them. If it goes into that worst case scenario, and it's almost unimaginable from the history we remember, but if you had your memory banks open to 208,216 BC, it was called the fall of Brenaway. There was massive civilizations on the planet at that time. They experienced a red pulse, and they were only able to get a few handfuls of people out before it was too late. And they were vaporized by the red pulse. And so were a lot of their buildings and that kind of thing. So it can happen. It has happened in Earth's history. It has happened more than once in Earth's history. Ideally, it's not going to happen, but if it does, the people who have flame body activation are the ones who can biologically get out. The The ones who can't get it activated fast enough have a couple evolutionary options to whenever their natural death would occur, they can get host matrix help out so they don't go into the black hole system. But the ones who can go through with their bodies, they are the Templar Masters team. They're being trained as the Templar Masters team. There will be, eventually, 144,000 of them, because it takes, technically speaking, 144,000 angelic human beings and their indigo counterparts to run a planetary Templar system, run the stargates, be able to run the frequencies in the proper way, in the proper sequence for grid repair after something extreme happens. If it went to worst case scenario, the people that are being trained in these right now, the people that have been sidestepping all the New Age nonsense that they like to throw at this particular set of teachings because they don't have them, basically, these people would be being trained to go through into the inner Eka gates to get education there and to come back and help to bring this particular system, part of this system, through into what's called the bridge zone. They would also be the resettlement team if it went totally bad, where there was not much left. I do know that there are already certain animals and plants from Earth that literally, just in case it got even to this point, that the Guardians have been for a number of years inviting in and helping them with genetic repair so they could actually be brought through gates. And then those animals are put back here, and those plants are put back here, and they help speak in the morphogenetic field, the templates. They speak to others of their kind. So there are races of animals and plants that are repairing right now, too, for this potential shift. But the people that are being trained are the ones who are intended to be the guardians of the ones that help those other life forms to come through in these type of transitions. Come through can look like two types of things. One, okay, there's a gate and I know on the other side I'm going to step through and it's like I'm completely somewhere different, completely somewhere else. That's worst case scenario experience where, oh dear, the hologram is collapsing behind me. The gate opens, you pop up somewhere else. Once you get out of Merkaba, it completely looks like another planet, literally. Even though it's inner Earth, it still looks very different. It's much bigger than this one, for instance. Now, if it wasn't worst case scenario, we were going to go through gates, but help the planet, or parts of it, to come through too, it would actually be like a time leap, like a shift forward in time, where you'd have a gap of memory. Okay, I was here one day, and I woke up somewhere else. How did I do? Wait a minute. Yeah, the somewhere else seems completely normal. Like you know where your toaster is, you know where you put that in your drawers. You look outside, and you also know that there was having a dream about these ancient political structures and this war that was happening on this planet and stuff. But I know that was in the past. There's a really strange slide effect. See, it's much more direct when you just like pop through a gate because it's fallen down behind you. When you do this other type, where you're helping to bring the planetary grids through, it is like part of time starts to accelerate and part of the planetary grids accelerate with it, and the other part starts to slow down and pull away from it. And if you're on the moving up one, you're doing a time slide, sliding up into the future, you're actually rapidly, it's almost like, you know how a record sounds or a tape sounds when you put it on too fast speed? Well, it's like that time between where you know yourself now and this future point you end up being at, you encode it into your body on fast speed, where you can hardly even remember that you walked through those moments, yet by the time you slide to the other point and you're focused and conscious again, you have it all there as memory. But there's a little distortion because a part of you knows that you didn't actually go there the normal way, where you move through from one set of time to the other. So these are the two things our planet's moving to right now. How big the time slip is will depend on how much of flame body the planet can hold and get built in before the grids start to separate. Part of the planetary grids will be taking a trip into slow motion and going down into Wisadek black hole matrix. What is going to look like to us while we're sitting here, I'm not quite sure yet. I know at some point, if we start the time slide, there's going to be like certain people doing certain things and seeing certain things, and we're going to be seeing certain other things that they're not seeing at all. Right? And there's going to be a point where these reality fields are together, but progressively seem to move apart. How many people are going to be in each reality field? I don't know. But it really depends, again, on how much of the flame can be activated in the planetary bodies. So this workshop is to prepare you for some very big things that are coming up. Primarily, the big things can be put into one word that was given to us recently. The word is called Hitharo, H-E-T-H-A-R-O. The Hitharo is a concept of physics in, the Anahasi language. It translates into words as the great silence, bless you, and it's used to describe a condition that takes place when certain phenomena of physics, of template physics, take place. When you have a current of energy and you have two other currents of energy that intersect with that one current. If you have let's put it this way, if you have a reversed current of energy and you have two other not reversed currents of energy of very particular proportionate strength that intersect with the reversed one at a certain angle, a transaction takes place between the three. And for a moment, they all shatter. The templates beneath all of them shatter, but they hold. They hold the pieces together. This point, it's like the silence. When they first intersect, there's this movement, more heat's building, more energy's building as they're moving through each other. And then there's a snap and a silence. It goes into stasis, where the particle units, the consciousness, and the frequencies of the three beams, the two coming in that were not reversed and the one reversed one, actually stop. And in that silence, anything that can transmute into divine blueprint begins to pull together into the original not reversed ray particles, and the stuff that can't be brought back pulls back into the reverse current. And then when the Hitharo ends, the stasis ends and the two separate from each other. What the Hitharo also does is change the angle of projection from the original reverse current. It shifts it by 45 degrees and splits it in two. So you had one strong reverse current, it splits it in two weaker reverse currents, and it shifts them both, one forward and one back, 45-degree angles from where they were. This becomes important when we get into the anatomy of the beast, which we will be doing, I believe that's Sunday, where we talk about the mechanisms that are affecting us on a planetary and galactic level. Because the Hitharo is going to be used to take care of a little problem called wormwood. All right. Some people have heard of Nibiru, the planet Nibiru. Nibiru used to be our 12th planet, and then some people think the word wormwood from the Bible, of that body that comes in and does damage on Earth, is actually Nibiru. We've taught before, and it's in some of the earlier teachings, that Nibiru and wormwood are connected in an elliptical orbit that dips between here and the phantom matrix. You have Nibiru on one end of the orbit, and you have wormwood on the other. It's an asteroid body that used to be part of our 5th planet, Maldak. Wormwood was due to come in more toward 2011 period, but because of what took place on March 23rd, 2002, which was the activation of the beast machine, the beast expedites the bringing in of the wormwood body, and it brings it in with a vengeance at an angle it's not supposed to come in at, that would actually send it between Earth and the sun. If that were to happen, this body's bigger than Earth. It would be time for evac, the big one. Watch it fall apart behind you. The Guardian races are not going to allow that to happen. There's a very particular thing that through the Hitharo can be arranged. When we get into the anatomy of the beast, you'll see there's this whole mechanism of generated frequency beams that come in and do things that are part of the beast mechanism. And if those beams can be altered through the Hitharo process, there is a point where if their aim is really, really good, and I'm sure it will be, the body called wormwood can be destroyed and turned into asteroids before it comes into our galactic plane, before it comes in from its rotation in phantom matrix up into our plane. The Hitharo isn't in 2012, it's not in 2011, because the beast was activated on March 23rd. We have X amount of time before wormwood comes up, and thus X amount of time before the Hitharo can begin. To do the Hitharo means it's coming down on a universal level. To do this means the split will take place in the templates, which is good for everybody, because instead of imploding, we actually get to have the negative part of ourselves go one way and the positive one go the other. Actually, that's not what we do. We heal the negative one, bring it back in, and then whatever is connected to it on the negative that doesn't belong there, we let go back home where it came from. But May 27th, of 2003 is when wormwood is due to come up into our lock system. It's then, and on that day, that the Hitharo peak is reached. The Hitharo actually began when we were in France with the activations that took place in the grids in France, which was the beginning activations of the planetary flame body. We have literally from now until the 27th of May for shadow body integration, which means getting the part of ourselves that's called the shadow, that belongs to us, healed, turned around, and brought back in so we don't lose that 2/3 energy. And whatever this thing is that's stopping our shadow from coming into us and being part of us, this thing is called a shadow dancer. It's from the Wisadek system, doesn't belong, wasn't part of you, it isn't you. We have to separate those connections, or we end up getting pulled down, we can't hold flame body, and we end up going into the part of the grids that are going to go toward the destiny of the Wisadek fall. So, it's kind of like, oh, gee, is that all? Yeah. Flame body activation. Flame body activation is actually, it gets easier and easier and easier, which is what's fortunate. It's, I think, the hardest part of any of this work. Once you get over the original shock that it's probably best not to talk to anybody about spirituality anymore because they're all going to get mad at you, right? Tell you you're evil, tell you, the game. But there's a big drama going on. We're all a part of it, and there's nowhere to go but through it. And sometimes that's the best healing. This planet is going to go through a healing. But it's very interesting that we found out, in fact, Az found it yesterday on a map, we've been progressively charting things on the planet, where the gates are, where the seals are, where all sorts of things are. So we know the planetary Templar. We know what it means when a certain thing is activating, where it is, where it might affect, those kind of things. What we hadn't done yet was chart what are called the Metatronic implants. There's a set of Metatronic implants in the planetary shields. They're also in our shields, as we'll see through the Shadow Body Workshop part. But one of the most interesting things that we discovered once we plotted them on the planetary map is where this one particular one, there's actually two pieces of it. It's called the 666 Apollyon seal. That's the original beast seal. That does certain things in relation to the beast that we'll talk about then. But it's located like in the center of Baghdad. Now, when things are being activated psychotronically, if there's matter forms sitting on top of them, they tend to fall apart. We saw that in the Twin Towers and in the United States. Now, it looked like airplanes ran into the Twin Towers. Big explosions happened, and then they all fell down. But even the people who built these towers said, wait a minute, there's no, how did that much impact create that much devastation? It didn't. Sonics did. Psychotronic pulse does this. They've been using the psychotronic and sonic, subsonic pulses on this planet since the Zetas came in 70 years ago. All right. They've been testing them. They've been playing with weather patterns with them and all sorts of things. There are things in our planetary grids called the APIN systems, the Atlantean Pylon Implant Network systems. They're like systems of microchips seated all over the planetary grids that connect in with the Metatronic implants, some of them. And the activation of the APIN systems was set in motion by those who would like a one world order agenda under the what's called the United Intruder Resistance Fund. They set that in motion on September 11th with the activation of the APIN systems that were underneath the Twin Towers. It's the sonics that they had to use. They send them from, the sonics come through from the Phantom Matrix. There's a part of Earth that's in Phantom. They send them through. They come through our grids, through our electrical systems, some of them, and come up and affect our Earth grids here. They sent the pulses from Phantom Matrix up. And there's apparatus that we have physically here too as well, like the HARP machine and those kind of things. They're all part of this network that are meant to interface phantom pulses and focus them here. But those pulses were used to take down the trade towers. They didn't go after the trade towers on purpose. It just so happened that they needed to activate those APINs and they have those implants, those microchips. And the only way to do it was to give them a heavy-duty blast. Now, this wasn't the good guys doing this. These are the ones, the Illuminati, who are working with the black hole races in their takeover agenda. But they had to disguise, they had to create a cover event. A cover event to make it look plausible as to why two buildings would suddenly fall down, why a certain part of another building would suddenly cave in. It would have been really weird if you're just walking around New York and all of a sudden, no planes, no nothing, and those buildings just started to go and turn into like butter on the ground. That might get the people that are scientific going, wait a minute, the only thing that could possibly do something like that is a subsound wave, because they know the power of sound waves. So, because all that technology is hidden from people, and it's not just in the United States, it's a global issue. There are cover events, or trigger events, that are used to cover up when grid activations or forced grid activations are going to cause some turmoil. Sometimes, they used to get away with them pretty easy because they were in areas where they could actually generate earthquakes to cover them. But at this point, what they're doing is, if you do too many earthquakes, then people get nervous about earthquakes, right? So you can't use earthquakes every time you want to activate the APIN system. You have to be creative. This is what the Illuminati are doing. They're helping the black hole intruder races to figure out how to do this without getting the public aware of what's going on. The fact that they need to activate the 666 Apollyon seal for the things that the fallen races are trying to create for that Hitharo peak day is interesting. It's interesting, too, that it's in the middle of Baghdad, which means things are probably going to fall when it gets hit with the pulses that are needed to activate it. You need an excuse, something that looks good, and you can also get rid of one of your own that aren't cooperating. The war with Iraq issue is all about this. It's not about oil. It's not about the man being a psycho and wanting to blow up the United States. I thought it was pretty amazing. They really had a glitch in the whole program. I mean, if they could have somehow linked him to Osama bin Laden, they would have had it covered. But they didn't. They left this loophole, and they went right into the attack Iraq agenda for no apparent reason. That is what was so... It was like, wait a minute, you forgot to cross a T and dot an I there, as far as your public mind control stuff. But it was getting so bad in the media over in the States. The people were just going, okay, oh yeah, military in the airports, yeah, no problem, we got to be safe, yeah, follow Mr. Bush. I mean, you watch this stuff, and it's frightening. And, you know, Britain is now getting involved with it as well. All of the troops, like both the United States and Britain, and I don't know if anybody else are putting troops over in the perimeters. Somewhere it's known there needs to be a war with Iraq. But the reason there needs to be a war with Iraq is to, A, get out one of their own that's not cooperating with their program. He actually is part of a soul group that's representing one of the different collectives that are fighting with the collective group called the United Intruder Resistance. So they want him out of power. And they also know that there should be some coverage. Now, they could just do a terrorist attack thing in Iraq or something like that. But I do believe there's going to be more activations. They need to drop bombs there. They needed to drop bombs in Afghanistan as well. There were other implant networks that had to do with something else there. We didn't get this, the whole rundown on those. But there are ways to cover up sonics that are going to make things fall apart. And that's by dropping bombs on them or, making earthquakes happen around them or tidal waves or something that distracts the eye. One of the biggest things that has been used here all along is the best way to hide something is to put it right before somebody's face and call it a different name. Best way to hide it. I found this out, and boy, did that hit home. When we went to France and went to the Louvre, they have built at this museum, beautiful old museum, right? Old buildings. This contraption of glass pyramids in the center. But I didn't know. We went there, and we knew by the time we left, that these are part of a network. That now inside these glass pyramids is very interesting. There's an elevator, a little open elevator shaft that constantly all day goes up and down. It's generating a field. All right. Positioned right within at very certain angles to the apex. There are the 3 points. These are connected to a very large APIN system that was under that museum space. It's an ancient one, but they're activating it. They're bringing it into activation. They've been doing it for a number of years now. Another one of the things that we were told, they didn't even show us which ones yet, but are connected to this manifest beast. These are the manifest faces of the beast as they exist with our cultures. You know the Space Needle places with the restaurants that rotate around the big thing with the big needle? These are all connected to the HARP system as well, the HARP system that's up in Alaska. What is interesting is we were in France. There was a pulse released. The Guardians had foretold it already in the Voyager's book, that at a certain point in between November and December, that the United Intruder Resistance people would have their Illuminati guys release what was called the gold sensor pulse. and it was intended to attempt to destroy planetary Stargate 12 so you couldn't run flame body or anything else. That pulse was released while we were assisting the opening of Stargate 12 in France. And it emanates out of that pulse, comes up from the phantom Earth systems through what's called the Shasta Gate, on Mount Shasta that's out there. I think it's in California, isn't it? Out there on the west coast in the United States. Goes from there into the HARP system, which is up in Alaska, and then shoots out through this network system wherever you want to, whatever they can code it. Just like you'd send it to this space needle or that tower or that pyramid, that kind of thing. The Giza pyramids are all wired into it. But when we were in France, they released this pulse, and we knew about the pulse, and then we heard about later there was an earthquake up in Alaska as well. So they got the reverb on the pulse. So these are some of the manifestations that are right in front of our faces. And people walk through those beautiful gold, the glass pyramids, the Louvre, isn't that neat? What a nice feat of architecture. They're so pretty, that kind of thing. They don't realize they're getting zapped when they go through it. This is part of the Metatronic system. It plugs into the Metatronic system, and it's meant to activate the Metatronic implants that we're all carrying in our bodies and don't know it. It's meant to activate the shadow. So these are happening on a major level. Another one of the structures, because we were sent, it was like this, we knew what we had to do in France, and then we were going to have Paris as just like a day since you're in France if you ever want to see Paris, tourist day. Yeah, right. There were 3 site activations that were on security seal that they couldn't tell us about till we got there, and they said, this needs to be done here. This is what this is. And they told us there was a triangulation that plugs into the HARP network and into a few other things. That was the pyramids at the Louvre, under the Eiffel Tower, and that's actually helped, and that was a long time ago. That's an old one.